Hi guys, maayong adlaw. For today's video, I will be presenting to you about solving word problems involving compound interest. This lesson is a continuation of the previous lesson I had in my previous video about solving word problems involving simple interest, and of course in finding the future value, the present value, and the formula in finding the compound interest. So before we start, let us have first the objective. At the end of this video, you should be able to solve word problems involving compound interest. This lesson requires us to have a prior knowledge on the following. Number 1, solving word problems involving simple interest, and of course, solving for the future value, the present value, and the compound interest. So to start, let us have our review first. We have this formula. The first formula is for finding the future value for multiple compounding periods. Then the second formula is just related to the first formula, but this is for finding the present value for multiple compounding periods. When we say multiple compounding periods, this means that the amount is compounded more than once a year, meaning the amount is compounded maybe semi-annually, quarterly, or monthly. The third formula is for finding the future value for annual compounding period. The same as with the fourth formula, this is for finding the present value for annual compounding period, which means the annual compounding period, meaning the amount is compounded once a year. So meaning the amount is compounded per annum or yearly or every year. Then the last formula is about the formula for finding the compound interest. You have here the I sub c, or the future value, minus the present value. So we will be using this formula in solving problems involving compound interest. So let us proceed to our first example. Example 1. If 25,000 is invested in an account for a 3% interest rate compounded quarterly. You have here compounded quarterly. That means this is multiple compounding period because the amount is compounded quarterly. That means 4 times a year or every 3 months. Then you are told to find letter A, how much will be in the account after 6 years, and letter B, how much is in the interest earned after 3 years. So letter A talks about the future value of the amount, which is 25,000 pesos invested, and the second problem is about finding the compound interest after 3 years. So we will have first letter A. For the given A, for the given, of course, our present value is the 25,000 because this is the amount that is being invested. Then the rate is, of course, 3%, or in decimal that is 0.03. And we have our N, meaning the number of compounding period, which is quarterly, or that is 4. Because the amount is compounded quarterly, so that means that is compounded 4 times a year. Then we have our T, which is time in years. We have 6 years. Of course, we have to find the future value in the account after 6 years. So if we have to analyze the given, our N is quarterly, compounded quarterly. That means this is multiple compounding period, meaning we will be using this formula, the first formula. The present value times 1 plus the R over N quantity raised to NT. Our R is for the rate, N is for the number of compounding period, and of course that T is the number of years. We substitute this given to the formula, so we'll have the present value is 25,000. The rate is 0.03 over the number of compounding period, which is 4, raised to 4 times the number of years, which is 6. Then afterwards, we simplify by dividing 0.03 divided by 4 and multiply 4 times 6. So that would give us 0.03 divided by 4 is 0.0075. Then 4 times 6 is 24. Then we add 1 plus 0.0075, of course, that would give us 1.0075 raised to 24. We just simply copy the present value, which is 25,000. Then afterwards, we raise this number 1.0075 to 24. By using our calculator, we can have 1.1964. Then, lastly, we multiply 1.1964 to 25,000. So that would give us 29,910 pesos. So this is our future value for 25,000 invested for 3% interest rate. This is now the amount in the account after 6 years. That is now the money in the account after 6 years. So from 25,000 to 29,910. So there is a compound interest of 4,000 plus 4,910. Okay, let's proceed to letter B. Example number 1, the same problem, but this time we will solve for letter B. You are told how much is the interest earned after 3 years. So what do we mean by interest here is the compound interest because the amount is compounded quarterly. So for the given, we have, of course, the same. The present value is 25,000. The rate is 3%, or that is 0.03. Our number of compounding periods is the same quarterly, so we have 4. Then this time, our time is 3 years. And of course, our unknown is the compound interest. Now, since we have to solve for the compound interest, but we cannot solve for the compound interest without solving first the future value. We need to solve first for the future value because the compound interest is equal to the future value minus the present value. So we need to solve first for the future value before we can solve for the compound interest. Okay, so solve first for the future value. The same, this is quarterly, so multiple compounding periods. That means we will be using the same formula. So we have 25,000, then 1 plus 0.03 for the rate, and n is 4. Then this time our t is 3 years, so we have 3. Then we divide, so that gives us 0.0075, then 4 times 3 is 12. Then 1 plus 0.0075, that would give us 1.0075. Then we raise this number to 12. Then that would give us 0.0938. Then we multiply this number to 25,000. That would give us 27,345. This amount is the future value. We do not have yet the compound interest. So this is the money in the account after 3 years. But since we are told to find the compound interest, so we will continue in finding the compound interest, which is equal to the future value minus the present value. Now since we already have the future value, which is 27,345, so we will substitute this value to formula. So 27,345 minus the present value, which is 25,000. So our compound interest is 2,345. So this is the interest earned after 3 years. So for example number 1. Let's proceed to example number 2. For example, we are given this problem. The total money in your bank account is 55,150 pesos. But you forgot the initial amount you deposited 5 years ago. Your bank offers 3.5% interest compounded annually. Then, find the initial amount you deposited from the start. So this time, the 55,150 in the account is now called the future value. Since we are told to find the initial amount, what is meant by initial amount here is the present value. So for the given, we have, of course, the future value is given 55,150, and the same with our rate is 3.5%, or in decimal that is 0.035. This time, our N, the number of compounding period is annual, that is stated in the problem, compounded annually, meaning annual, meaning once a year, that is why we have 1. And of course, our time is 5 years, and we have to solve for the present value. Since we have to solve for the present value and the number of compounding period is 1, so we will be using this formula. As you can see, we do not have the n here because this is supposed to be r over n. But when we say n is 1, so that means, because our n here is 1, so that means r over 1. R over 1 is the same as with r. The same also with t. This is nt. 1 times t is the same as with t. That's why we do not have the n anymore here. So we substitute these values to the formula. Our future value is 55,150. So we will have 55,150 times 1, the constant, plus our rate is 0.035. And our time in years is 5. Then this is negative, so that's why this is negative 5. Then we simplify, we add this number, 1 plus 0.035, that would give us 1.035. We just simply copy the future value, 55,150. Then we raise this number to negative 5. By using the calculator, we can have this value. So 0.8420. Then we multiply this number to 55,150. So that would give us 46,436.30. So therefore, this is now the initial amount you deposited 5 years ago, before it gained an interest and reached at the amount 55,150. Now let's proceed to the next example. Example number 3. If 250,000 pesos is invested for 6 years at 5% compounded semi-annually, this time compounded semi-annually, meaning this is now multiple compounding period, meaning the amount is compounded twice a year. You are told to find the compound amount and the compound interest. This time we have two unknowns, the compound amount and the compound interest. So there is no problem with the compound interest because this is just the future value minus the present value. So we need to solve first for the future value. So this time we are told to find the compound amount. When you say compound amount, this is just the same as the future value or the maturity value. Okay? So for the given, our present value is 250,000. Our rate is 5% or that is 0.05. This time, our N, the number of compounding period is semi-annual or that is 2 because the amount is compounded twice a year. Then our time is 6 years. Of course, we need to solve for the future value, which is the compound amount. So for the solution, since the number of compounding period is multiple, so we will be using this formula. So substitute this value to the formula. So we will have 250,000 times 1 plus the rate is 0.05. The n is 2. Then we raise this one to 2 times the t, which is 6. Then we simplify, divide 0.05 divided by 2, then multiply 2 times 6. So we will have 0.05 divided by 2 will give us 0.025. Then 2 times 6 is 12. Then add, that would give us 1.025 raised to 12. Then we copy 250,000. Then we raise this number to 12, that would give us 1.3449. Then we multiply that to 250,000. So our future value is 336,225. This is now the compound amount after 6 years. So from 250,000, the amount would reach to 336,225 after 6 years with 5% interest rate. Let us proceed to finding the compound interest. Okay, so for the compound interest, of course, we still have the given. The present value is 250,000. The rate is 5%. Then semi-annual, the number of compounding period. Time is 6 years. This time, we already have the future value, which is 336,225. Okay, so we need to solve for the compound interest. So we will be using the formula future value minus the present value. So our future value is 336,225 minus the present value is 250,000. So when we subtract, that will give us 86,225. This is now the compound interest after 6 years. Okay, that's it. I hope you have learned something from this video. But before I go, let us have this practice exercise first. Number one, we have how much must be invested in order to have 100,198.12 after 5 years if the investment gains an interest rate of 7.2% compounded semi-annually. And number two, a bank offers 8% interest rate to an investment. If you invested 30,000 pesos for 6 years, find the future value of your investment if the account is compounded quarterly and letter B compounded semi-annually. Okay, practice solving these problems. And if you have questions, please do not forget to comment down below and do not forget to subscribe and click that bell button or the notification bell so that you will be notified if there will be new uploads in the future. Let me leave this with you. Learn and create memories. Life is not about proving your worth, but it is about living. Thank you and God bless.